Hi, it's Ryan from Knights Around a Table, and I'm very excited today to be unveiling a brand new series that I am reluctantly calling Nice Bits. Special thanks to the patrons on the Discord server who helped me name this series. Please forward any angry emails onto them. Why is this on the table? Well, this is the intro to this entire series because Alien Frontiers taught me something about myself. I don't like mentioning this game, even though it's my second favorite game of all time, because I don't like the publisher very much. The publisher, Game Salute, Starling Games, Clever Mojo Games, which merged with them, they're not a great publisher in my experience. They're very customer hostile. I don't like the way that they run themselves. I like the games that they produce, but I don't like their modus operandi, and I don't think anybody should support them. So if you want this game, go steal it. Not from your FLGS, but find their warehouse, break in, and take as many copies as you can get. Just kidding, of course, don't steal anything from anybody, but I do hope that these properties change hands and wind up in the hands of other publishers who are a little bit more customer friendly. Anyway, Alien Frontiers taught me something about myself, like I said. It taught me that components matter to me a whole lot. This is why I don't play a lot of games by a publisher like GMT, where it's just basically one step above naked cardboard on the table, everything's flat and dull and boring. Alien Frontiers is a game about, it's a worker placement game with, it's dice worker placement, where you've got spaceships all around this planet Maxwell, and you're trying to colonize it. And you're colonizing this planet, you're putting down little colonies, and they look like little wooden domes. That's what the colonies look like. And this is one of the original printings of the game. I don't know if it's first run, but it's close to it. So that's what it looked like. And then over the years, they've created Kickstarter after Kickstarter that they took forever to fulfill, and then they made more Kickstarters when they hadn't even fulfilled the first Kickstarters. Anyway, that's on them. But as they improved the game, they improved the components. So one of the things they released was this upgrade pack. And it came with stuff to make the components a little bit cooler. And so they changed those colonies into these things. Look at these things. This is a little domed city, little domed colony that replaces the boring wooden domes in the game. And I thought that was just the bee's knees, and I flocked to my friendly local game store to buy that thing. And I had more fun playing this game when I had those little improved components. And so that taught me that components really do matter. And I'm very shallow and very much into artwork and production values. And when people say, "Oh, that game's overproduced," I'm like, sign me up. So that, by way of intro into today's story, just this past Christmas, a couple days before Christmas, I was on the internet, which is a very dangerous place for me to be, especially when I'm in possession of a credit card. And I was cruising around a thread on Reddit where somebody had posted a 3D printed model that they'd made and painted, and it looked all kinds of adorable, and people were saying, "Oh, what'd you make that for, and which printer did you use?" And the person named the printer, and it was this printer called an Anycubic Photon S, which is an SLA resin printer. I knew nothing about resin printers, but the more I researched, all of 7 minutes after that, the more I decided that I wanted this thing, because with it I could make really cool, finely detailed minis and component upgrades for my board games. And one of the things I've never really enjoyed about 3D printing to date is most of the printers that people get are these PLA printers, where there's a bunch of plastic on a spool and it feeds it into the printer, and you've probably seen them work. There's a little stylus that goes X, Y, and Z, and it spits out this plastic. And when the model's finished, it's nice. It'll do big pieces. You can do big full helmets and stuff like that. But the look of it takes a lot of post-processing to make the thing look good, because you can see the lines, and it just kind of reminded me of like low-resolution images from the late 80s in video games. You can see all the stair-stepping and everything, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to wait till 3D printing gets better and the results can look a bit smoother, and it kind of never did until these PLA printers showed up on the market. And now, using a completely different method of dunking this build plate into a vat of resin, they get really amazingly smooth and incredibly detailed results out of these printers. So I thought, oh my gosh, I gotta have one. And if you were hanging out on TikTok around this past Christmas and you saw anything that I was putting out there, I was chucking up some videos about me getting the printer and unboxing the printer and being so excited about the printer. And then I couldn't use the printer because UV curable resin is not a super safe material to be working with. The fumes aren't good for you. If you get it on your skin, it can be very irritating to your skin. And it really depends on who you talk to. You've got people on two ends of the spectrum. Either it'll kill you dead, drop you where you stand, or it'll smell bad and annoy you. So somewhere between those two extremes, I think, is the truth, and you do have to be cautious handling resin. So we live in Canada, our garage is cold. That would be a great place to put it and to create some sort of venting hood for it, but it's just, I wouldn't be able to use the printer 8 months out of the year, so that's no good. Cheryl, my wife Cheryl, was in the middle of a bathroom renovation, and she suggested putting this thing in the bathroom, and I said, well, what about venting? And she said, well, we can rig up something where we vent it out the window, you know, like, because I looked up other solutions and people have done that. And so I thought, oh, you know, okay, let's do it. But I had to wait for her to finish her bathroom reno first. Anyway, here's the story in a few time-lapse videos of how we actually went about venting the Anycubic Photon S printer out our bathroom window so that it would be all set up and ready for me to print. And then you'll see me print my very first 3D model at the end of this video. But before that happens, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do. If you like this kind of content, you want to see more stuff about 3D printing or making upgraded components for board games, please click the subscribe button, click the bell to get notifications when I've got new stuff. And if you really, really like this content, I know all the theaters are shut down now, all right? Because, you know, different places are in lockdown, you can't go out and see movies. They produce great entertainment, but they're not gonna talk to you about 3D printing components for your own board game. So if you're not buying any movie tickets to see big blockbusters, let this be your blockbuster. Consider throwing me a couple bucks over on patreon.com/knightsaroundatable, and I love it and appreciate your support. If you wanna hang out with my patron crew and everybody on the Discord server, you don't have to be a patron to join, but if you are a patron, you get access to special channels where I'm showing you behind the scenes stuff. So my patrons already know all about this 3D printing stuff. They've seen all the stuff that I've made with this, and they know the content that's coming up in this series, and they helped name the series, which might get me canceled. We'll see. But let's check out how Cheryl and I worked together to how Cheryl mostly did all the work to vent the new 3D printer that we got. Here's Cheryl with a really big board. So the plan was to vent the printer out the window and connect it via some kind of, you know, duct hose from the printer out the window so the bad air goes out there. So here's Cheryl drilling a 4-inch hole with her new drill press that she got for Christmas. This had been in the garage the entire time, but we set it up in the front hallway, unboxed it, because we live in Canada and it's freezing cold in the garage. So this is where we set her up to do it, right next to the boots. I don't think she minded too much. And there's the hole we needed. Success. Looking good so far. Meanwhile, I was downstairs. We bought this, you know, it's one of those dryer vent things with the little flaps on it, and so that was what we bought. 2 of them. One's going to go on the board that I just showed you Cheryl drilling a hole into and sticking out the window. And I'm removing the fins from this one because this is the one that's going to attach to the side of the printer. Now, when I went and I purchased the Anycubic Photon S, I didn't realize that the Photon S was a different printer than the Photon. So when I watched YouTube videos about how to vent these printers, there was people said you could 3D print this little venting piece and stick it at unscrew this plate at the bottom of the Photon, and you 3D print this thing and stick it at the back of the printer and vent it out that way. But the Photon S doesn't have that. So you got to come up with a different solution, and this was our solution. Now the reason I'm cutting around the edge of this thing was because we like the screw holes in it, but we need the lip of it to stick out from the side of the printer. It's not going to like go into the printer. It's going to jut out the side of it. So we can use those 4 screw holes that you see there, but we didn't want the whole flange around the rest of the thing. So I'm using a knife here, trying to cut this out from that bigger, thicker flange that's around the outside. I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology. Is that called a flange? You know, the outsidey bit. And there it is. After 5 minutes of sawing away at it, I was able to get that middle part out and discard the outside bit. So, looking good so far. Here comes the printer. This is the Anycubic Photon S, conspicuously lacking a back panel that I can unscrew and vent. The parts in this machine are mostly made out of plastic, whereas the Photon is mostly made out of metal. It has a metal casing. So there's some improvements with the Photon S, including a dual Z-rod system. As you can see, those 2 rods inside that the bit moves up and down on to increase stability. I don't know. Do you care about this? I'm not too sure. But the idea is it's got these UV protective panels on the outsides of the printer. And I needed to, we're going to pop a hole in one and attach that dryer hose connector. So I just used a little flathead screwdriver in here, and I was really worried that I was going to crack the thing, but it wasn't too bad actually. I used it and I just went in and popped out all the little tabs. Here's where I slowed down and decided that maybe I shouldn't have any delicate parts of the printer inside while I'm working away at it, trying to crank stuff out of it. So this is called the vat. It's got a delicate piece of film on the bottom of it. I didn't even know how these printers worked fully when I bought this thing. I didn't quite get it, but later on in the video you'll see it in operation and you'll see what it actually does. So there goes the vat with its precious, difficult to replace film. Let's get that out of the way. And then you can see the screen beneath where I took the vat from. That's where the UV light projects and solidifies different layers of resin. It may look for a second like I've cracked it, but that's just the reflection of the umbrella. When I was playing this video back, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a crack. And obviously, I knew there wasn't a crack because I did this spoiler alert successfully. But there, I got the panel out. And the next step was just to use that hose attachment and put it down as a template on top of the panel in order to trace the circle. I thought that I could just take this Olfa knife and cut the circle out of the plastic, but here's me giving it the old college try. It turned out to be like really thick plastic. There was no way that I was going to get through it with just this knife. So, you know, there's one method of cutting a circle is to just to score the diagonals and the orthogonal lines, and then hopefully that weakens it and you just have a shorter distance to go with the more difficult curved part. But like there was no way. Like, I sawed away at this for a good long time, and I just made no headway. There was no way I was going to get through this knife, so I had to come up with some other plan. As usual, when I mess something up, it's Cheryl fix it for me. So we were really worried. Went back to the drill press. We were really worried that just sticking this hole in was going to crack the whole thing. But look at this. Just goes through like nothing. Little spindly spirals of plastic winding around the drill bit there, but no, it went through. It didn't crack anything. We had it clamped down really nicely, and it wasn't really brittle plastic. It was kind of like it was pliable enough that it took. So here's the hole saw attachment. Thanks to Cheryl, she's going to bore through it for us. Again, this was the really scary part. You know, the first hole was one thing, but stopped a little bit, a little nerve-wracking. But no, look at this. She gives it another go. And she just... I cut the sound from this footage, so I'm gonna... That's what it sounds like, hole saw. Does that give you a good idea? So she gets right through it, and she makes the hole in it just beautifully. So back downstairs, I've got this awesome, perfect 4-inch hole, and Cheryl drilled 4 other little holes to take the screws, and she sent me downstairs with a couple of nuts and bolts. And I just affixed our little hose attachment to the panel for the side of the printer. And there it is, ready to rock. Thank you, Cheryl. So, just to preempt anyone trying to emasculate me in the comments section, Cheryl is the handy one in the relationship, if you haven't figured that out already. She worked in a hardware store for 7 years, and she's the one, if there's a reno to be done or something to be fixed, she's the one who grabs the tools to do it. Me, I'm afraid of power tools. My mother instilled in me a deep-seated fear of anything with a motor in it, anything that went vroom, from motorcycles to vehicles to power tools. And it's funny because later in life, she actually went and bought a big pile of power tools and made herself a little like carpenter's workshop. And she took courses and she overcame that fear. Me, not so much. I've retained that fear to this very day. But that's why it's great that I have Cheryl. She completes me. And Cheryl also completes this project, so it was her idea, and it was a good one, to take some caulking, and there are these little slotty holes in there. I guess when you're attaching the duct hose, it's got wire in it, and you're supposed to thread the wire through those little slats and sort of screw it in. But we don't want those slats because they're letting air and stink escape. So remember, the whole point of this project is to keep the stink from getting out of the printer and into our noses and lungs. So she applied this and let it dry. And we had this, Pink Panther foam insulation stuff left over from another project that we didn't complete. I didn't complete. It's my fault, not hers. So the reason I'm cutting this stuff up is because, like I say, we live in Canada, and this thing's going to vent out the window through this board, but it's still the dead of winter. So the idea here was to cut a piece of insulation the same size as the board, and then, cut the hole in that so that the bit facing the inside of the bathroom is insulated and maybe wouldn't let so much of the Great Canadian Winter inside our house. Please note that in this project, as in any project, I'm not wearing pants. Those are jammies. And now a little bit of glue. A little dabble, do ya? Okay, who am I kidding? That's a lot of glue. Now the printer is bound for our newly renovated bathroom. Yes, Cheryl completed the renovation, and here's what she did. We don't use the tub at all, so she stuck this board over the tub, and that's the window where the board is going to go on the right. And here's me installing said board through the open window, and you can tell that it's very cold outside. Here, boop. I'm doing my own Foley here. So it's a really nice fit. Like, Cheryl did a great job. You noticed we painted that piece of pink insulation white so that it would look better facing inside the bathroom. The neighbors can look at the ugly piece of wood from the outside. So this is a fan that I bought on Amazon. And this is the thing that's going to hopefully suck the air out of the printer. So this is the part that actually is going to attach to the board, and then the hose leads from the fan down to the duct that we installed in the printer, or the duct interfacing the connection piece. You know what I'm talking about. The thing that had the flange around it. And with bated breath, I hope that it all works. Jam it in there. The trick, of course, is that it's me looking upset because I was pushing the duct cover out on the other side because, whoops, we hadn't screwed it in. And Cheryl added a little bit of weather stripping to the other parts of the board. Here I am screwing in the other, what is this thing called anyway? This dryer vent cover. So this is the part that's going to be facing outside. And this is the same piece as the one that I cut before, but like I said, we bought two of them. So when the bad air escapes through the hose, it's just going to vent out this thing into nature, where all of the Canadian flora and fauna will smell it and presumably drop dead. So that was a quick fix, and now it's working, and now it's going in just as it should. And there we are. There's the result. That's the Anycubic Photon S 3D SLA printer, resin printer on the right, and the Anycubic washing cure station on the left, which you use to clean the sticky resin off your prints and then throw them back in and put a UV light on to firm them up. And here I am, I'm so excited, shaking up my first bottle of UV cured resin. I've got bare arms, gloves on, mask on. The mask doesn't do anything because the dangerous part is fumey, and the mask is more to protect against particles. So I learned that a little bit later. That's not a very effective mask. So I just don't wear a mask anymore. but I will. I mean, the masks that have filters that protect you from vapors are a little bit pricey, so it's in the works. I'm getting that. And then again, the other thing that's sort of missing as I queue up the test print here is that we really should have like an activated charcoal filter in that hose to purify the air before it gets spewed out into Mother Nature, poisoning wolves and ducks and other wildlife that traverses the barren landscape of Canada. But that's coming. I mean, that's all in the works. I was just really excited to get this thing going. So I didn't super understand how it works, but this is how it works. You pour the resin into the vat and you select your print, and this build plate dunks itself in the resin. And what's going on at the very bottom, that screen underneath the film, is it's projecting layer upon layer of the thing that you're trying to print, millimeter at a time. And what you see on the screen there, those 8 vertical lines, are the very last layer as this print finishes of what the resin's being hardened into using the UV light. So once it's finished, the vat, it's been pulling the resin out layer by layer, dunks it in, it hardens a layer, and then it pops it up and then dunks back in, does the next layer. So this is all the layers formed and semi-hardened using the UV light, and now it's pulling that test print out of the bed because it's ready to take out of the printer. And that's what you get. You get your little print stuck to your build plate. This is called a RERF, an RERF, or Resin Exposure Rangefinder, and so it helps you determine which are the best settings to use for your printer depending on which details kind of worked and which ones didn't work. So this is the very first thing I printed on my very first 3D printer. That's pretty exciting. The next step is you got a big vat. This is the wash and cure station I bought because otherwise you got to buy a whole bunch of other gear, and this seemed like a really sort of simple solution. A little one-stop shop. So you put it in this vat of isopropyl alcohol. You just hang your build plate right in there on top of this sort of like French fry deep fryer cage, and that spins around and cleans off any excess resin stuck to the model. Then when that's done, you pull it out of there and you use some kind of spatula. Now I was brand new here and I didn't know that this rubber spatula it's too bendy. It's not a good thing to pry your stuff off with. Luckily, the printer comes with a more hard plastic spatula. I didn't know that, so here's me trying to use these sort of scissor tweezers to pry the model off the build plate. With reasonable amount of success. Alright, there you go. Oh, it's really satisfying when you actually get it off of there. Now, I've done a bunch more prints since this one, and this is a great step to wear safety glasses for, because especially when you have little supports attached to your model, which I'll talk to you about in other videos, this is the point which they're kind of flaking and snapping off and flying all around the room, and they could go into your eyeball, and you don't want uncured resin in your eye. So, you live, you learn. And here, I'm putting them on. So you take that vat of isopropyl alcohol off the wash and cure station, and then you put this piece of foil down, this little turntable, and you put your models on there because they're still not safe to touch yet. And then you put this shield over it and select a time. I wasn't too sure how much time to choose here. Probably 2 minutes. I don't know. It's tough, and you do it by experience. But you just select your time and you click the button. And it's not quite working for me here because I realized, there we go. The shield wasn't perfectly on. And then it spins them around and shines a UV light at them. How cool is that? And that little piece of foil on the bottom is so that the UV lights can, reflect off them and harden the underside of your models. And when it's all done, you take the shield off. And now, hopefully, if they were in for long enough, and I don't quite know how to gauge that, but if they're in for long enough, they're now safe to touch without gloved hands. So here I go. Whoa, dangerous. And that's what the finished thing looks like. Without painting and finishing, of course, but I'm not going to paint and finish these. They're just test models. So there it is. Pretty cool. I hope you were impressed. I know I didn't produce anything really sexy, but that is for future episodes of Nice Bits, which are coming up. So stay tuned to this. Stay tuned. That's such a TV term. Have you seen those videos where people are like, hey, child under 40 mime talking on the phone and they do this instead of this. Well, that would stay tuned. Just me anyway. I'm so old. What I mean is, keep your eye on this channel, and if you don't have the bell clicked, you won't get notifications, but if you do, let you know when Nice Bits stuff comes up. I've been beavering away behind the scenes producing some really cool stuff that I cannot wait to show you, and it's gonna just take the games that I play to the next level, which is a video game term, and you see video games were a form of entertainment back in the 20th and 21st century. Never mind, doesn't matter. Thank you so much for watching this one, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Did you just watch that whole thing? Oh, hey, to 100% this video, click the badge to subscribe, and then click the bell to get notifications when I've got new stuff.